Imagine a single line drawn across a vast wilderness more than 250 years ago. A line intended to end a petty quarrel between wealthy colonial families. But that line would grow into something far more powerful and dangerous. It became the invisible wall between freedom and bondage, the fault line that cracked a young nation in two, the boundary that helped ignite the bloodiest war in American history, a war that claimed over 600,000 lives. This is a story of the Mason-Dixon Line, not just a border on a map, but a scar on the soul of America. Today, we'll meet the two brilliant Englishmen who surveyed it through treacherous frontier wilderness, dive deep into the grueling challenges they faced, and explore how their precise scientific work unintentionally drew the most explosive cultural and political divide in US history, one whose echoes still linger today. So let's start with the men whose names are forever linked to this fateful boundary: Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon. Mason, born in 1728 in Gloucestershire, England, was a top-tier astronomer. He worked at the prestigious Royal Observatory in Greenwich, assisted in major celestial observations. Dixon, born in 1733 in County Durham, came from a wealthy Quaker family and was a talented surveyor and enthusiastic amateur astronomer. These two weren't strangers when they got the American gig. In 1761, the Royal Society sent them on a daring international expedition to observe the transit of Venus across the Sun from the Cape of Good Hope. This was part of a global effort to calculate the Earth-Sun distance, a huge scientific quest of the Enlightenment era. Their teamwork and precision impressed everyone, so when a tricky surveying job came up in the colonies, they were the perfect and expensive choice. Little did they know their next project would outlive them and shape a nation's destiny. So why did the colonies need these elite English surveyors in the first place? Well, the trouble started back in the 1600s with sloppy royal land grants. In 1632, King Charles I gave the Calvert family a charter for Maryland. 50 years later, in 1681, King Charles II granted William Penn a massive tract for Pennsylvania to repay a debt. But the descriptions overlapped, especially the area just south of what would become Philadelphia. The fuzzy borders led to confusion, competing settlements, and outright violence. In the 1730s, things escalated into Cresap's War, armed skirmishes between Maryland and Pennsylvanian settlers, with shootings and homes being burnt. By the 1760s, after decades of lawsuits reached the British courts, the Penn and Calvert heirs finally compromised. The border would run 15 miles south of Philadelphia's southernmost point, with adjustments for Delaware's lower counties. But local American surveyors bungled the job repeatedly. Wrong calculations, poor equipment, rugged terrain. Apparently they were all to blame. Desperate for accuracy to prevent more bloodshed, the families hired Mason and Dixon in 1763 for an absolute fortune, around $700,000 today. Mason and Dixon arrived in Philadelphia in November 1763 with state-of-the-art gear. They began by precisely locating the southernmost point of Philadelphia, then drawing a tangent line westward. Over the next 4 brutal years, from 1763 to 1767, they pushed 233 miles west through dense forests, steep mountains, swamps, and rivers. They made nightly star observations to correct for latitude drift and meticulously accounted for Earth's curvature. Groundbreaking precision that made this one of the most accurate surveys ever done at this time. Every mile, they set limestone markers shipped from England. Every 5 miles, larger crown stones engraved with the Penn family crest on one side and the Calvert crest on the other. Their team of up to 40 axemen cleared a 27-foot wide vista through the wilderness just to sight their instruments. They endured freezing winters, sweltering summers, illness, and even tense encounters with Native American tribes. The Iroquois had ceded land, but local groups weren't happy. In 1767, fearing attack, their native guides forced them to stop about 36 miles short of the full goal at the western edge. Nevertheless, their line became the official boundary for Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, and later West Virginia's Panhandle. It was a triumph of science over chaos. When Mason and Dixon returned to England, their line was just a resolved property dispute, but fate ultimately intervened. In 1780, Pennsylvania passed the gradual abolition of slavery. Virginia and Maryland kept it. Delaware, though partially north of the line, also remained a slave state. Suddenly, stepping north across the Mason-Dixon Line meant freedom for many enslaved people. By the early 1800s, the phrase Mason and Dixon's Line entered political language, and during the 1820 Missouri Compromise debate, lawmakers used it as a dividing line for slavery in new territories: free in the north, slave in the south. And by the 1850s, it represented even deeper rifts: the industrial north versus the agrarian south, and the differences between accents, economies, and of course, worldviews. And during the Civil War, it roughly marked the northern edge of the border slave states like Maryland and Delaware, who remained loyal to the Union despite Southern leanings, and Abraham Lincoln, the president at the time, prioritized keeping them loyal. Though the Confederacy's front lines were farther south, the line embodied Abraham Lincoln's House Divided speech, showing it wasn't just a military divide, but a cultural and economic one. From a scientific survey in the 1760s to a lasting symbol of America's deepest divisions, the Mason-Dixon Line reminds us how history's unintended consequences can so often reshape nations. Now, if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue watching History in Hindsight. I hope you all have an amazing day, and thank you all so much for watching.